G'day and welcome back to another episode of SidekickTV. Today we're joined by David Bell again, who's the Director of Business Growth at Xero. If you're familiar with SidekickTV, you will have already seen David, and so I was eager to get him back on because in the last interview I certainly learned a lot of things and I thought, right, I need to know more about this. So
it's good to know.
Yeah. So thank you, David, for joining us again. And today we're talking about the supply chain issues that we're anticipating are going to be hitting New Zealand. We're already starting to see the start of this with cat food being short on the shelves and various other things, but we wanted to talk about it in the context of business and what we really see is going to affect small Kiwi businesses.
Yeah, so it's definitely a problem. First of all, it's great to be here in sunny Christchurch. It's a little bit colder than Auckland, so here's the jacket I've run in and done this. So nice to be in the offices, and thanks for having me. Yeah, it's definitely something that's crept up on us, hasn't it? And it's very much changing the game of what we're seeing in business and stuff that's just we've treated as being absolutely standard and normal, that we can get what we want when we want it. You know, you might have to order something at best, but that's it. You know, now it's a new ballpark.
Yeah,
really is.
Yeah, and that's it. So I mean, you know, what are the three top causes, or what are the top causes for this thing, and is it going to be a catastrophe?
I think. I hope it's not going to be a catastrophe, but it's definitely going to have an impact, and I think it's going to have an increasing impact from where we are today. We've lived in a bit of a bubble here in New Zealand, and we've been able to live a pretty normal lifestyle now for quite some time, and I think we might have become slightly unaware of how other countries have been doing the COVID outpack. So other countries' factories have just not been able to operate at full tilt, and on top of that, with new COVID practices around how they operate within factories, their production capability has declined. So two impacts: can't even get to work, or if they get to work, they can't do it at the level they used to do it at, and so that's led to just a slowing in the amount of product being produced. The second factor that we're seeing is the ports. So the ports, again, there is thought that COVID can be transferred on shipped product, and so all the ports globally now have new practices in which ways they can unload and do containers. So just the amount of throughput through the ports is slower. Go to Auckland Harbour right now, out the back of Rangitoto, there are ships sitting there waiting to get into the port, and so it is a new ballgame. Flying in here to Christchurch last night, saw ships sitting offshore. We just don't normally have that here. That's a Singapore thing. So the world has changed around getting product, and it is a global supply chain nowadays. We don't make as much as we want locally, and so we're reliant.
Yeah, we certainly don't have that self-sufficiency that happened, out of necessity, and that's the whole thing. We're not going to be self-sufficient if we don't need to be. So, you'd also mentioned earlier the printing of money around the world, and everybody feels a little bit flusher. Demand has also gone up.
Yeah, so governments have tried to ensure that businesses survive, and I think that overall they've done a pretty good job. And certainly in this country here, through the Xero data that we've seen that New Zealand, it has really bounced back from a really quick, sharp dip around this time last year. But we have come back pretty strong, and we're like on an index where 100 was normal going back 2 years ago. We're 14 digits up, 14 index points up, and that's a big input up. So we are actually humming here in NZ, and Aussie's the same, and the UK's come out about 2 months ago. We're just seeing it do this right now. America is talking about it. So the printing of cash by central government to make us all feel good about life is starting to create huge demand. So not only have we got supply problems, but we've now got demand issues.
Yeah. And so, what do we anticipate some of these outcomes are going to be? What's going to happen to businesses operating in the New Zealand economy?
I think let's do the supply side first. So I think as a business owner, you are going to, if you aren't already, and most of you will probably be finding this already, but you're going to have to really keep on top of where you get your supply for whatever you do from. And there are people who are really struggling. So there's just going to be an outright product drought. The second thing that we start to need to watch for is inflation. So it started to come into the rhetoric around journalists and business journalists around the world. But if you saw the CPI data, the inflation data out of the US in the last week, it has bounced big. So interest rates could go up. People have borrowed quite a lot more money that is here at the point where we're down at such low interest rates. People have gone woohoo and bought houses. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens around inflation and where the interest rate curves go on the back of that. So something to watch with your economists and keep an eye out for that business advice. But those are the two things I think that could happen. But prices are definitely going up.
Yeah, and so there's going to be a real household squeeze there, isn't there? Then if all of a sudden the mortgage has gone from 20% household income to 30 or 40.
Yeah. So that creates impacts just on free cash flow. So we're seeing products go up in price, I think, in most areas. It's very heavily orientated around housing at the moment, but I think it will spread.
Mm-hmm. And you were saying, I think, in our last catch-up that if you took housing out of our economy, so actually the bounce back hasn't been that strong, has it?
Yeah, so, welcome Aussies for those that are here. So we have now got some Aussies coming over, but they're not coming in the numbers that are supposed. I think when the border opened, we've actually got some of our Xero team in country from Melbourne, so it's nice to have them over, and we actually got to have a hug with an Aussie this week, which was pretty cool. But it's not happening in its droves, but the bookings are up in places like Queenstown, which is nice. But it's an interesting spot.
Yeah, we'll see what tourism does, and
take it outside the main centres of that. There's still people are working tough and working hard.
Yeah, okay. And so we're assuming then that we're going to experience inflation. We're going to experience product drought. I was talking to someone recently who installs vehicle windscreens, and he said, okay, so we've got the glass here, but I think we're about to run out of silicon. So don't get a stone chip anytime soon, guys, if we can't actually fix this stuff. But what does he do in his business, or what can New Zealand Inc. do when we've just run out of silicon, or it might be the next thing that we use day in, day out? What can we do as a country?
I think,
or as a business, sorry.
I think it's a case of where you may have worked on what you might call gut feel and experience. We're going to have to be far more ruthless around planning and getting ahead of where you might have need. So understanding where your new demand curves are, so what product is in demand, how much you need to get on top of the data that's around that, and the people that supply you, you need to become their best friend. Right, so in the world where we always used to chase money, is how do I get paid, was always the discussion Xero used to have, and it's always the discussion that small business and accountants would have with you, is how do you make sure you get paid. It's interesting now that the conversation is flipping, how do I pay people as well? Because if a supplier has limited product to give, and there are two people that want it, the person who he believes or she believes is going to be the easiest to do business with are likely to get that limited supply. So that means paying on time. It means making yourself easy to connect with. Just all around the business aspects of what you do, be clear about the product you want, when you want it, where it needs to go to. Just make yourself super easy to deal with. And if you do that, you're more likely to get that discretionary amount of product in a drought or product than the other person. And it's just a consideration I don't think we've had to think about before. Also start to think about other suppliers and be smart about it. If you're Kiwis here and can make stuff, insert yourself into the supply chain. There is definitely the demand. So there's so many random places, cat food, silicon, timber for building houses is now in ridiculously short supply. So we're trying to solve a housing problem. We've got trees, but we don't have any timber for building houses. So what do we do?
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're a sawmill, if you're, I think of somebody that just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago bought an old sawmill here in Canterbury because it was not being used.
Yeah.
Well, actually, switch those machines on, hey?
Yeah, and I'm sure for us accountants and software people, that's an easy statement to say, but it is. We all need to collectively work together to try and solve these problems in New Zealand, and if we can make ourselves slightly less reliant on global supply chain and keep business and profits here in New Zealand, I think that is an interesting discussion. It's not nationalism, it's just being practical and making sure that we can use the skill sets that New Zealanders have and to turn them into reducing the exposure. We will be exposed, but how can we reduce the exposure? Just through getting the right people in the right place. So I always talk about being curious and asking questions. Go and find out who can help you if you've got an idea to get something done, and the courage to do so. So ask questions.
And also as well, actually, ask if you're in a business and you're concerned about, where's silicon coming from? If it were me, I'd be thinking, well, who else in this country can perhaps make silicon?
Yeah.
What factories have we got that are kicking out these chemical products that could turn their hand to this? Or,
No, we do quite a lot here. We just don't necessarily do a lot of it at scale. This is a pretty cool country when it comes to doing things, So it is a case of asking into your business networks of people that can help. And look, businesses like yours at Sidekick are the sort where you know a lot of people, and so come to those focal points where information is available. Yeah,
perfect. Excellent. Thank you, David. I realise you've got to race away, and I don't want to be in trouble. So, thank you so much.
It's always cool to do this. I enjoy it. So, and it's good to be back here, as I said, in Christchurch. So, be good to see how things are going down here. But it's pretty vibrant this morning out here. So
yes,
awesome.
Absolutely. No, awesome. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks, guys. Cool. Cheers, mate.